Am I the butthole for telling my niece that my husband is dead? NTA. Your sister is TA here. If she thinks a 7-year-old can't handle the concept of death, what does she think you've been telling your own children? And how did she think that was going to make your children feel when their cousin is acting like their dad is just away on a trip? ETA. Wow, thanks. Did not expect to get so much response on my comment. I was 7 when my dad died and I dealt with it pretty well. Kids are often much more resilient than we think. I believe kids are more resilient than adults. Adults are often clinging to these built-up psychoses and attachments. Kids don't have that. Totally. The day my dad died, I was fine. I cried, but I went to my grans for the day and then wanted to play out with my friends after. Everyone was like? Because I was just having fun. I'd argue the problem started at home after when my mum didn't deal with it very well. I remember going to my friend's house to ask if she wanted to play out and her mum kept hugging me and crying and I was so confused because although I knew my dad was dead, I wasn't in tears. I'd cried in the morning. I just wanted to play out. It was really confusing for me. My mom died at 10. Similar to you, I cried in the morning and moved on. I'd get random bursts of sadness, but overall it was okay, I guess. My family suggested therapy to my dad because they thought I didn't love my mom because of my lack of moping. I just sort of accepted it as a child and knew there was nothing I could do. If my dad died now, I think I'd be devastated. It would be a lot harder now. My kids knew what death was when they were 3, since that was when they asked. I also told them where babies come from the first time they asked. Stop hiding things from your children, people. They are humans, they are intelligent, and they can handle it. Yup. My mill passed when my eldest daughter was nearly 3. We explained in a kid-friendly way that Mill was very sick and the doctors couldn't fix her, so she had gone to heaven. And she understood perfectly. My mom works in childcare. When my grandma died, she was sad, and tried explaining it to one of the kids, around 2 or 3, telling the kid that my mom's mom died. Who shot her? She asked. Turns out, this kid only knew about mom's dying from Bambi. Some additional information was needed to supplement what she had learned from Disney. That is both dark and adorable. The sister is absolutely TA. My cousin has a mental age of 7 and her parents never told her my brother died. 4 years later, they came to my wedding and my cousin kept asking me where my brother was, over and over, and her parents just stood there the entire time and said nothing. I was furious. Every time she asked, it was like I was being stabbed. It hurt so much and her mom just stood there looking at me waiting for my answer. I don't hold it against my cousin, but I am still angry with her parents. I don't think you are obligated to uphold their lie. Years ago I discovered that my aunt and uncle had lied to their daughter about their wedding date. It was a shotgun wedding and they backdated it a year. They got married the first week of January and had the foresight to intentionally send out all the wedding invites with the wrong year. Cousin was born 5 months later. 16 years later, my cousin asked me in front of her parents what year they got married. I got a rather deer in the headlights look as I realized that they had not been honest with her. She wasn't a dumb kid. And weddings are public record. Apparently this lie was about trying to prevent her from having sex prior to marriage. Telling your child who's the product of premarital sex not to have premarital sex sort of feels like telling them they're a mistake who shouldn't have been born with extra steps. Cruel. There were so many issues with that decision. And I resented them thinking that I had some sort of obligation to lie to my cousin. I am significantly older than she is and am more of an aunt than a cousin. Lying to children this way is very dangerous. Children have an active imagination and little understanding about abstract concepts like death and being gone. It is very important to talk honestly to children. What your sister did was awful and I'm happy you did what you did. What can happen if you don't tell niece? She will think it's weird that he is gone for such a long time. And where is he? On a business trip. What happens when someone close to her goes on a business trip? Well, she can get very scared and believe that they will be gone for years just like your husband. But what you did was also wrong. It is too vague. She needs for someone to sit down and tell her what killed your husband. What happens next time she or someone close to her is sick? She can think that she will die too. And that is a scary thought for a 7-year-old with a mum who can't talk properly with her about it. She needs to know why he died and what illness he had, or if it was an accident, and how low the chances are for it to happen again. I've worked with families with trauma like the death of a parent with an incurable illness, or the death of a child for some years. Children can always handle the truth, but once you start to blank over facts because it might upset them, they start filling in the blanks themselves, and their imagination can make things like that much worse than the truth. If she thinks a 7-year-old can't handle the concept of death, what does she think you've been telling your own children? She doesn't think that, she's just afraid of explaining an uncomfortable subject. 100% agreed. I had a child right before my 17th birthday and gave them up for open adoption. I didn't learn until years after the fact. But apparently their adopted parents told them at 5 years old that they were adopted, that I'm their birth mom, and answered questions. Apparently that's a very valid age to relay information like this to a child. In a way they can understand and then elaborate as they get older. FYI, if you want your vote to count as the top comment, you need to edit it to specifically say NTA. This, carrot. One of our neighbors had a wife who died of cancer in the last couple of weeks. We have a 7-year-old, who is close to that neighbor, as he treats her like a granddaughter. We knew she'd want to know why he was so sad, so we simply explained that his wife got very sick, and had to go to the hospital, and wasn't able to wake up again/come home, and that sometimes that happens when people get sick, which is why we've been wearing masks and not going to do fun things with the germs going around right now. She was sad for him and understood. Was it fun for her or something she enjoyed? No. But it didn't cause her to have nightmares or freak out unreasonably, it was just sad. I can't think of a single age where learning that people die would be a pleasant thing. Furthermore, Op's duty was to take care of her kids, and the potential damage to her own kids of thinking their father was coming home was way greater than the potential damage to her niece from learning that death exists. Not the butthole, and I'm so sorry for your loss, Op. Can you imagine that argument between the kids? He's dead. No, he's not. My mom said he's just on a trip. Mom. Is Dad on a trip? Why did you lie to us? That would be awesome to deal with. My 6-year-old understands death just fine. What the sister really means is, I'm avoiding talking about difficult subjects with my daughter. NTA. 7 is old enough to understand death. How did your sister not expect your niece to ask or comment anything, when they were visiting you and your kids? How did your sister not tell you before? I'm really sorry for your loss, Op. But you're by no means TA here. When I was 4, someone died. I went to the funeral but then remembered it as a dream, so I didn't realize that someone has died in real life. For months, I thought he was away for work and would be back in 6 months. His daughter, who was not even 10, kept crying every day. I never said anything to her, but I finally asked my mother why that girl had been crying for months. My mom was surprised that I didn't know and assumed that she hadn't brought me to the funeral. She told me he had died and that the girl was sad because she missed him. I accepted that and moved on. It wasn't difficult to understand, especially after being told where his grave was located if I wanted to visit him. I was also around 4 when I learned about death, although mine was scary. Me and my cousin were both around 4 or 5 when he died. He was outside and fell in a thing that I could only say is like a well. He drowned and I was just one house over a few hours when I went outside to play with him. They had already fished his body out of the well. He was still wearing a diaper. I'm sorry for your loss, that sounds traumatic. Hopefully you have been able to process that, heart. Oddly enough, it wasn't. I just kind of thought so. When people die they don't come back, and went on with my life. It's weird, but I have yet to cry at a funeral. I've only ever had 3 close family members die, the most recent being 2 weeks ago when my great-grandfather died from diabetic shock. I was 7 and had a similar experience, except the person was my mom. I got pulled out of school and we spent days at the hospital after she got in a car wreck. In the end she didn't make it, but we were quickly taken to live with my dad in another state since they divorced when I was a baby. I thought we were just going on summer vacation because that's all that would happen when we went to my dad's. I don't think I really understood what had happened for years. Even now it feels like a dream. It's not like death won't occur just because it isn't age appropriate. When I was her age, a friend of mine died in the '04 tsunami, along with her parents and one of her brothers, leaving her then 10-year-old brother as the sole survivor. Not one bit of that was age appropriate, but it would have been horrifying if our teacher lied to us and told us that she moved. 7 years old is old enough to have watched Lion King and understand that sometimes people die in murder plots from family members and then come back as a cloud, but also the grass, but also a star. Lol. Maybe the kid's mother edited the video so that Mufasa doesn't die, he simply goes hunting and sets up camp somewhere else? And Ellie just moves to Australia on her own and Up. And Nemo's mom decides to leave her husband and only one of the eggs, while she takes all the others somewhere else. Or maybe the kid has never been in contact with any form of cultural situation, because I can't think for a second of a single TV show or movie that doesn't include death in any way. The girl would have been crushed if her first encounter with death was reading Bridge to Terabithia in school. And also, the more I think about it, the more I'm puzzled. How has a 7-year-old not met anyone, like classmates, whose grandparents or parents or someone they know died? How do you get to 7 years old without encountering the concept or without having it be something other than fantasy, if she has seen movies or TV shows? I'm so confused now. NTA, it's incredibly insensitive and inappropriate of your sister to be telling your niece he's alive. I'm sorry for your loss. Especially if they will be seeing each other. Imagine if the kids heard? If Op's 5-year-old heard he was coming back, it would have been devastating. Huge setback for the family. I cannot imagine the setback that could happen if this was said in front of Op's kids. I feel bad for all of these kids, Op's kids and niece. I feel like all of this should have been addressed way sooner. This seals the not the butthole for me. Normally I'd say a parent should explain death to a kid. 7 isn't too young emo, but it's the parent's choice. But this. If she was going to bring a kid around in this situation, original post had every right to correct that ASAP without notifying mom, to avoid a huge incident with her kids that would have a lasting psychological effect. They would potentially grieve all over again, mistrust their mother and only parent for lying, hate the cousin, and the aunt. So much chaos could have ensued. Oof. Imagine being one of those kids and getting caught off guard by that though. So glad that the issue was caught before damage was done to the other kids like that. This. And to react the way she is. Not cool. NTA. Children don't need to be protected from the idea of death, especially when a family member dies. It just needs to be presented in an age-appropriate manner, which it sounds like you did. In general, the big talks about big subjects like this should be left to the parents. But this wasn't an abstract discussion. You had discovered that your sister had flat out lied to her child about your husband's death. And that needed fixing before, as you rightly noted, your niece said something that could have really hurt your children. If your sister was so determined to avoid discussing your husband's death with her child, she absolutely should have warned you that your niece believed he was away on a trip. I'm sorry for your loss. Absolutely this. The sister should have mentioned it rather than the original post being put on the spot. Kids are always relaying stuff they've heard, so surely the sister knew her kid would ask. And 7 is absolutely old enough to understand and begin learning about death. There's plenty of kids' cartoons that deal with this very subject. The original Lion King is one of my faves to discuss with my younger cousins. They understood the vague concept of it even as toddlers. It's honestly pretty unhealthy for the kid to be kept away from that sort of thing. One of my favorite shows when I was 7 was a UK cartoon called Animals of Farthingwood, which was basically animated Game of Thrones with animals. Characters were killed off nearly every episode. I definitely understood the difference between death and going away for a few weeks. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.